What in the absolute hell was that? What was that? Seriously. Oh man, I feel like I jumped back to 2 years ago. Oh, they are our kryptonite. They are our kryptonite. This is now three tournaments in a row, each in each in a semifinal, where Spain kicks our butts every time. And I've been saying, the one threat to this French team is a team that is able to deprive the front four of the ball, and this is exactly what happened. There is so much to say, but I'm so angry. I really don't want to do this video, so I'm just gonna keep it short. Go straight to the individual performances, and then we'll just analyze the game from there. Because honestly, just trying to think back to everything that happened, all of it was Spain, by the way, right? We did nothing. We did absolutely nothing this game. This this is such a shame because in my view, the penalty destroyed us, right? I'll be honest. Like I thought the beginning of the game was pretty 50-50. If not, I thought France, even though they didn't have the ball as much as Spain, were offering more going forward. I thought we were the more dangerous team. But Digne, bro, you screwed us, man. What the hell was that? What the hell was that? You are like what, 33? How do you make a mistake like that? How do you make a dumb mistake like that? It's not just that you didn't read the trajectory of the ball well. When you see it doesn't come to you the way you expected it to, head it out. Go ahead. You let it bounce off your head, which in terms of time is like 3-4 seconds at least, and then you wait to get it back. No, and with that, you don't even look around you until the ball gets back to you. What were you thinking? What were you thinking? Seriously. And then you see that Yamal is coming, and so you panic and you just boot it. And of course it's a penalty. What were you doing? Jesus Christ, man. Yeah. So, you know what? Let's just start, position by position. I think it'll just be simpler and it'll help us get to the bottom of what went wrong with this team. So, you can't really blame Mignon for anything that happened, right? He kind of got abandoned today by everybody else. But the only thing we can say is we needed him and he didn't deliver, right? He didn't make the saves that we were hoping he would make. I don't remember a big save that he had to make that he did. So it's not his fault, but he didn't, he wasn't a good aspect of this either, right? Upamecano, solid, right? This is probably he and Rabiot are probably the only guys I won't be on too much today because you could tell that when Saliba left, which is such an unfortunate, and that's another thing. People underestimate how good Saliba has been for us, right? I think people realize that he's been good, but I don't think people realize how good he's been, right? Because the amount of spaces he covers, right? The amount because it's all in the intelligence, right? The thing with Saliba more than anything else is that he knows where to go. He knows where to place himself to get to the ball before anybody else. And so you don't see him, fight it out with other players like Upamecano does, right? Because Upamecano kind of just chases after people, but he anticipates the play. That's why I think he's absolutely sensational. And as good as I thought Lacroix was on the ball when he came on, don't not having a Saliba in there to be the experience, to be the guy who sweeps up balls before they ever come, it cost us, right? That second goal from Porro, it was a big hole, right? Maxence Lacroix didn't follow, and Digne. I mean, we talked about it, right? We talked about it. I think everybody knew that this would be our weak point, especially against a team with a winger like Kemal, right? We all knew that this would be our weak point, right? And it was. It was. Having a guy like Dean in a game like this makes zero sense. It makes zero sense. Obviously, this is all, after the game. And I guess, with all that we've done, it makes sense, right? Dean has been good for the last few days, for the last few games. But this was, wow, this is downright awful. Um, He knows that he made a mistake, and then after that, he just didn't get back on his horse. Horrible, horrible. Yamal got him every time, every time. And this is why I'm saying for a team that is going so like that is so offensively focused with its forwards, you need a guy who can cover the wing defensively more than anything else. And then out of all the left backs that we have, the only one that could have done a job against Yamal is Lucas Hernandez is Lucas Hernandez. He is used to facing wingers like this. He's done this countless times. The World Cup that we won, it was Hernandez who was a rock in the left at the left back position. A rock. Nobody could pass him. A rock. We don't need Dean's passing in this team. We don't need it, right? Like nobody's gonna go get in the end of a beautiful cross that he can put in. So Dean was just put in every single worst position that he could have. The only reason why Barcola started was two reasons, right? And I did think starting Barcola was the right choice, by the way. Barcola was here so that you could run behind and receive a pass from Melisse or stuff like that. And also because he has the legs and the speed to get back and help Dean whenever we were in, in trouble on the wing. Um, so Dean just an awful game, but who this was if we were gonna lose, which was a pretty much a 50-50 chance, this was the only way it was gonna happen, right? This was the way it was gonna happen. Yamal versus Dean. Dean got destroyed by Yamal and by Porro. Both of them. They destroyed him every time. Every time. What an awful, oh my God. Stinker. He was the worst on the field. I think everybody knows that. Wow, how bad was that? Kunde was, I think, pretty decent. I mean, in what we know about him, but this guy is not at the level of this team. This guy is not at the level of this team. Every time he received the ball, it took him 3 seconds to finish his touch. Every time he was slowing down the play constantly, if not losing the ball. Because every time he touches the ball from like a high ball that he receives, he touches it. It needs to take a bounce after he touches it before he can put it down and then control it. Oh, aren't we supposed to be the team that's fast in this game? Aren't we supposed to be the team that goes in behind that high line that Spain come to us with? And you put on Koundé? I'm sorry, it's just not enough, right? And it's not like he was really threatened on the left with Alex Baena, right? He's not a left winger. So this was a long call. We know that. It's not his fault. I don't blame Koundé, right? I just think that he's not at the level that this team requires to win the World Cup, right? These two are weaknesses. They are Achilles heels. And when you have such strong Achilles heels and lack of coherence, right? Every time we played a team, and I thought this would happen against Morocco, but it did. Excuse me. Because we were so good in the midfield that they were never really put in danger. But and Morocco was bad, right? Way worse than I thought they would be. But these guys can't defend well enough to cover for every single other, strength that we have. Although, let's not get this twisted, right? Koundé, compared to him, and compared to all these guys, all four of them, and at the front, top notch, right next to him. Because the real reason, like the real problems in terms of individual quality on the field, having Chouameni in this game is like trying to defend against um against fuel against fire with fuel. Chouameni is not the guy against a team like Spain. The most important thing is that we fight with them to keep the ball. That is the most important thing, right? Because that is their game, right? They are gonna kill you with 1,000 passes. They are gonna deprive you of the ball as much as possible, right? So there are two important key factors in order to fight this. Number one, you get a guy who can get it back, right? In which case Chouameni is, right? But in the midfield, in which you already are one man down because you're playing with four attackers, which is not the wrong decision, to have a Chouameni instead of a Manu Kone is suicide. 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 Manu Kone is a million times better on the ball than Chouameni. A million times better. And we saw it, right? And that's the problem. The only guy who really fought in this midfield was Rabiot. He got a yellow. And so Deschamps felt the need to take him out so that we didn't risk having a red. And so who came on? Kone. Kone came on for Rabiot. But Kone was doing the same thing that Rabiot was before, right? But there was still an imbalance there, right? If we had Kone and Rabiot, who were in this World Cup the best midfield that we've had, I would have liked to see that. I would have liked to see that. Kone is so good at resisting pressure, so good at resisting a high press, which is exactly what Chouameni sucks at. Sucks at real. And today he was awful. Chouameni was awful, right? Like yeah, he got on the ball a couple times. Maybe when he was here in between the two center backs and absolutely pointless, left a huge hole in the midfield that Rabiot had to cover by himself. Coherently speaking, that was terrible. Horrible, horrible decision. What was he doing? We didn't need a guy here. Chouameni came in way too deep in this game because he didn't want to risk being in there and fighting for the balls, fighting the press, because he knows he can't do it. He knows he can't do it. So having him on the field instead of Kone when you have a Kone was stupid. It was just downright so stupid. Dembele felt like the Dembele against Paraguay today. He did get the ball a few times, but and this is the thing with France, right? France, in order to, the reason why we never really get going early is because the first part of our game, whenever our attackers get the ball, they try stuff. They try stuff. They try stuff, it doesn't work, and then by the end of the game, we would have resisted well enough that we eventually find our tune and we end up scoring. And then we score goal after goal after goal. Every time France starts scoring, that's it. They score for like forever, right? They don't stop scoring. The problem is that we need to get scoring. And the perfect image of this is Dembele. Every single game that Dembele has played for France, his first 15 minutes are awful because all that he's doing, even though his ideas are the right ones, his execution for every pass is always it always ends up in the opponent's feet, right? And this was Dembele all game because he was always looking for himself. Now, he's not the only one at fault, let's be clear. But this game, there's absolutely nothing to defend in terms of display from Dembele. Nothing. He tried a little bit at the end to actually, go at it a little bit more solo, but what that was when Spain was just we're just taking it easy, right? Because the game was over. Awful, awful. I really believed in the second Ballon d'Or. It's not gonna happen. I really believed in the World Cup. It's not gonna happen. And with the display that you had in this game, you don't deserve it. Although I love him, and he's not the only one at fault because Elise was downright awful today. I don't know how well because this is like three games in a row now where even though before Elise was our best player, in this game he was just not at it. And I think the reason why this France team just could not find their tune was because Elise just wasn't at his game. This French team, in terms of, building up play, is so dependent on one dude in Michael Elise. So dependent on him. And because we have, in the midfield, we don't have guys who will create unless we're like high up the field, in which case Rabiot can take part a little bit. But from a counter, Elise is the only guy that can do it for us. And Rodri just dominated him. Dominated him. Absolutely dominated him. And he is having an insane World Cup, by the way, Rodri. What a player. That is, wow, what a display. He was always there every time. Out of all the midfielders that we have, and I'm going to exclude Rabiot out of this, right? Um, Rodri was the one who was the most physical in this game, even though that's not his game, right? He was the most physical, the most clever. He got really, really smart fouls that really, really, helped, the pressure. What a game that he had today. And he is my man of the match for Spain today. Man of the match altogether, but what a game he had. And he dominated Elise. Dominated Elise. Barcola was never, for some reason, never. Well, I mean, we know why. We didn't even have the ball. But when we did have the ball, Barcola never really got fed in behind, which I think was insane. Like you have a guy like Barcola, he's a cheat code, right? He's a cheat code. You send him in behind, he's got the pace to beat anybody. But he never got used for that. If you were asking to dribble, might as well just use Due then, right? But I think, again, I can't say this enough. I did think Barcola was the right call for this game because if we had scored, and this is an analysis that I had about the game before it happened, right? I think to me, whoever scored first was going to win the game because there were only two scenarios possible. The one that we just saw, right, in which, Spain scored first and then were able to just, frustrate France because they stopped them from having the ball. They just passed it, small passes, tiki-taka, round and round. But also, if France won, right, France is very good at staying back and defending and then hitting on the counter. And then, probably would have scored another one off a counter. So whoever scored that first goal wins. And I think deep inside everybody knew that, which is why that Dini mistake was the beginning of it all for us, right? I'm not saying it's the only factor, right? In the end of the day, you're professional, you have professional football players who are you're supposed to be the best team in this tournament. You're supposed to have a reaction, right? But against Spain, this is exactly the kind of team that will stop you from being able to react at all because you'll never have the ball. You'll never have the ball, so you will not be able to react. And they frustrated us. We eventually had to start gambling, and then they went off, right? They scored that second goal, and then Yamal scored a beautiful goal that was narrowly offside. They went off, right? It was over. After the first goal, it was over. Let's be honest. It would have taken a miracle off of one shot that like off one of the really few balls that we would have had, which was possible, right? We could have banked on that because we have the talent for it. But throughout the whole game, I think the after the first half, everybody knew that these four were not going to find their rhythm. Maybe after the first 5 minutes of the second half as well, because you always want to see how they react after halftime, but they didn't, right? It was a no-show from all of these four. Whenever they had the ball, they didn't have it much. But whenever they did have it, it was awful. And Elise was one of those main problems, right? Today, he had the worst game I'd ever seen him have in a France shirt. Um, and the problem is we rely on him way too much to do that for us. Um, and normally he can warrant that kind of dependency, but wow, the Spanish midfield is just way better. It's just way better. Rodri destroyed us. Fabian Ruiz always here when he needed to be, always got the ball back every time. Olmo, what an assist he had for Porto. Wow. That guy, whenever he's at the end in that zone over here, close ball, wow, what a player. He's absolutely fantastic. Um, so one thing is as well is I think as well as I thought Deschamps didn't necessarily start a bad, starting lineup, even though we all knew that the that the fullbacks were a problem for us, but that is not new, right? He went with what he's been doing. That's fine, right? Nobody's gonna blame him for that. And so far it's been working, right? So you can't really blame him for that. But I think we all knew that these guys were getting carried by the level of this team, right? They weren't helping carry this team. Um, So that isn't my issue too much. It's how Deschamps read the game in this game because Barcola was not the forward that needed to come off. You choose. You pick Dembele or Olise, whichever one, if not both, but they had to come off way earlier. Doué should have come on for Dembele, and Olise should have left the field for Shirky. In fact, when Shirky did come on, it was a lot better. It was a lot better because he was the guy who was able to. receive the ball when he could, and then start going forward, right? It was a lot better when Shirky came on. And this is something that Shirky pretty much guarantees you, right? Even on a bad game. He might make a mistake here and there that'll cost you, but he has a rapport with the ball that's just too good to handle, right? So my conclusions were Chouameni, awful, wrong decision. Not taking out Dembele and Olise earlier in this game. In fact, I think Dembele played the entire game was a mistake. Mbappe did not get fed, so there wasn't a lot he could do. I still thought when he did get the ball, he took it under control and he really tried to go forward and stuff. I just thought he slowed the play down a little too much. And I'm not gonna blame Mbappe specifically for this game because I think everybody was bad. I know that, he's the big name, so people are gonna look at him to blame, but I don't think he was the source of the blame today. I really thought that the way Dean screwed us with this dumb mistake just it really put us in a terrible position, and it against the Spain team that really knows how to defend and knows how to handle right. The only weakness in that Spain team is scoring a goal. They can't score a goal, right? They can't go forward. They can't score a goal. The problem is we gifted them that, right? We gifted them a goal. Because it was off of no danger, nothing. We were not being put in danger for the first quarter of this game, right? It was only because Dean made a mistake, and then after that, we knew that they were in their best position, right? They didn't have to attack, so they played the extra pass every time. Tiki taka played our way through our midfield. Elise was not pressing at all. I thought, in terms of attitude, Elise was bad today, right? Really, really bad. He lost the ball, and you didn't see him running back. Where was the intensity? Where was the I'm gonna at least go make a foul or something, because this was awful from Elise. He didn't come back to get the ball. It was downright, oh, bleh, awful. Mbappe didn't press as well, so I'm not gonna say anything about that. I do think ultimately the idea of not pressing was Deschamps' idea, right? He knows that pressing a team like Spain is pointless and stupid. Um, I do think ultimately pressing high wouldn't have been that big of a problem because I don't think that they had. I don't think that they have the pace to go in behind and catch in behind our two center backs. However, I do understand the fear of Yamal getting in behind Dean, which we saw multiple times today. Um, yeah. So Deschamps, I thought read the game wrong because yeah, Rabiot was on a yellow, but the midfield you needed to have was Kone Chouameni, was Kone Rabiot, right? It needed to be that. I think that was the only mistake that Deschamps made when he started the lineup, in the starting the lineup, especially because Kone's played the last two games. So, and he's been good. He's been great. In fact, I think for two of those last three games, he's been one of our best players. To take him out here against the midfield, which again, a midfield that will press you, you need a guy who can be good on the ball. And because you only have two midfielders in that zone, right? How many times did we lose the ball in this area? How many times? How many times? And I think that's what causes the second goal, right? So, yeah, that was a mistake. Tchouaméni was a mistake. As much as I like him, I think against Spain, that was just a horrible decision to have him in the team. And then the handling of the substitutions, right? I do think ultimately Deschamps did get screwed by the fact that he had to switch out Saliba early in this game, and therefore didn't have many other changes left to do. But with the ones he did make, he made the wrong decision. Barcola is always a danger. You always need to put him on. You always need to leave him on against a team like that. However, and I did think ultimately, like even though he failed to do what he tried, he did try, right? Whereas I thought Dembele was, you know, absent, absent in this game, needed to go off, and even more so, Elise, in fact. Now, what are the takeaways for this France team? Now that we have lost, and I think the best way that we can make, the best way that we can analyze what's wrong with the team, obviously, is when we lose, right? So, I'm not gonna lie, right? I'm very upset. I know that I probably seem calm. I definitely seem calmer than I am, right? Because I'm livid. I'm so upset. But I'm also, it's not like we had a bad World Cup. It's not like the tournament was a complete failure. I just think it was one game. And that's the thing with World Cups, right? Even though you're the best team in the tournament, one game can kill you, can kill you, can kill you, can kill you. And you played against your kryptonite, right? This is now, how many times have we lost against Spain in the last few years? Absolutely crazy, right? Spain is our kryptonite because they know how to keep the ball out. They know how to frustrate us, and they know how to make sure that this team doesn't get the ball in front areas. Um, but I think the key takeaways, and I'm convinced, right? I'm convinced of this. I don't know how, you do whatever you want. I'm just gonna just put this down. You need Shirky in here. And more importantly, you need Shirky here. Here. When he came on, he helped a lot with our red up. In fact, with the way we couldn't get up the field, not having Shirky on sooner is a mistake, right? And I said that, right? That means Elise goes on the right, which I'm happy with. And then, Dembele's a winger. He can play on the left wing if you want, but I still would like to see this, right? Like I said it before, I'll say it again. And what will it take? What will it take for Zaire Emery to get a start? Have you seen this guy's season? How do you choose to put Zaire Emery ahead of Koundé? Not choose to put Zaire Emery instead of Koundé after the seasons that you just saw, after the season he just did, and then that entrance in the in Morocco game last game, monster, monster everywhere. What a player! How does he not start? Hell, I'll start him against anybody in the midfield. I'll be honest, maybe not Rabiot because we've seen how important he is in this team. I actually wouldn't start him again ahead of Kone either, but I don't care. You make him play. You make him play. He's a monster. How does he not play? And I'm not gonna keep going about this, but you might as well put a center back at left back. And the best guy who does it, who has a left foot, is Lucas Hernandez. I feel like people have really been sleeping on his season, Lucas Hernandez, because yeah, he's the guy who subs in for Nuno Mendes. Okay, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't sub in for Nuno Mendes? Somebody explain that to me. But you need a defensive left back? He's the best one you have. The best one you have. He's had a crazy good season. There was absolutely nothing wrong with Hernandez this season. Absolutely nothing wrong. Apart from that one crazy tackle he did on Xavi, not even a tackle, he hit him. That cost him a 3-game suspension in the Champions League. Apart from that, Hernandez, flawless. Flawless. He came into that Bayern game where we were all defending like crazy and he fit right in. Right in. What a player, and I would have loved to see him, especially because we know Deschamps is the kind of guy who I thought was really, really happy with his laurels, right? He knows when he knows something works, it's going to be very hard to convince him to change it, right? That's why Koundé started instead of Zaire Emery because he had a good Euro, right? In 2018, did you see what Lucas Hernandez did for this team? He is such a big part as to why we won the World Cup because he was handling every single right winger that we ever had to deal with. However, if you decide to have somebody else there, I can accept it. I understand that in that position we are a little, short-staffed in terms of, players of quality if you compare it to the rest of the group. Um, yeah, it's unfortunate. I'm not gonna, trash on Deschamps because he had a good World Cup. I thought his choices in general were coherent. It wasn't the coherence I was, thinking of. But it was coherent nonetheless. Elise being the metronome of this team, having three players up top that can rotate positions, that was clever, and smart. I didn't, I just think ultimately he just really badly handled this one game. The problem is that is the one game where you needed to prove yourself more than any other game, right? Morocco was a good point made, but. this was to seal yourself as the best team in the world. And now nobody can say that, right? Nobody can say that France has the best team in this World Cup anymore because of how we got dominated by this Spanish team. I still think this is a better team than Spain. However, in terms of direct confrontation, Spain is everything France hates. Everything France hates. Every single weakness that France has, Spain has this like that's their strength. So not much more to say about this. Honestly, I don't think I'm gonna say any more because we lost. That's it. We lost. We lost fair and square. We lost to a better team. We were awful. The attitudes were just, I mean, they were in, they never got in this game. I mean, they did at the beginning, but as soon as the penalty happened, it would have, they never got back in this game. They never figured out a way to change the way this game was happening, the way this game was going. And the second half looked exactly like the second quarter of this game. Exactly. I think we have like how many shots on target? Maybe one, maybe two at the end with Dembele trying to shoot. But before the second goal, I think we had zero shots on target before the second goal. And by the time the second goal goes in, it's over, right? It's game over against a team like Spain. Um, so yeah, I'm upset. Let me know what you guys think in the comments if there are any of you out there who are watching my videos. Um, let me know where you think the problem is. I will say in their defense, it did kind of feel like everything went against us in this game. Um, Not the refereeing. I thought the refereeing was fine, but Saliba getting an injury right after we conceded a goal, the way we conceded that first goal. But that is not the only excuse. It's not like we created anything to make it. Like even if these things didn't happen, what would have guaranteed us that we would have had the upper hand on this game? Nothing. We didn't show anything to prove that we could have won this game realistically, even though I still believe we could have in different circumstances. Um, I can't blame anybody who thinks that no matter how many times you play this game, Spain thrashes France every time. After what we just saw, I can't blame them. Absolutely not. And this is going to be a tough hit because the consequences of it are huge, right? None of the French players now can win this Ballon d'Or, which sucks because there were a lot of contenders. Um, we could we could watch Spain or Argentina or England win it, which as a Frenchman is hurts very deeply. We don't like any of these teams. Um, yeah, I had a bad day as well. Like after the game was over, it took me like an hour and a half to get home. Just an awful day. So I'm really upset. I'm really upset. I don't want to think about football for the next few days, although I will have to watch the next semifinal, but I just want this tournament to be over. I don't even think I'm gonna bother watching that third place game because I think it's when you see your team get knocked out, just end it. You don't want to see them play another game. Um, I'm not saying I'm not proud of this France team because they did make me proud. I do think we showed a good face in this tournament. We just it's a little bit like the US, right? With the way we went out, it kind of stains everything that we did. Because we showed nothing in this game. And it's too bad because I truly think that if this France team had won the World Cup, which they really could have, this would have been one of the best teams to ever win it. But they didn't have that in them. They're not that team. And it's not simple. If they were, they would have been able to at least show us something a little different. Even with the little amount of ball that they had, they should have showed us something different. That's it. Bye bye, France. Good luck to the other teams who are still in it. Um, but the World Cup is over for us.